Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Sahara Hare, and with me today, transversing through the Sahara Desert is my good friend Eli Copperman. Say hi.
I ain't no friend. I'm Riff Raff Eli. No, I'm kidding. Hey, how's it going, Anthony? It's good to be back here, especially in the seminal brand new year of 1955.
And this is one of the highlights of 55 for sure. So, as mentioned, this is a review for Sahara Hare, released on the 26th of March 1955. It's the 735th in the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Gone Collection Volume 4 DVD set, which also features a wonderful extra, because this is not very common. They normally throw these things out, but you get a lot of the storyboards in that one, plus some deleted scenes, so there's some pretty cool stuff there. But it is available in high definition. It's probably out on streaming somewhere. I think it was going to be on one set, but they ended up removing it. I don't know, but it is available in high definition. Just not on YouTube, unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it on their own channel. They may do it, they may not. It's up to them. I can't do it though. Okay, but in case you haven't seen this one, so Bugs arrives at what he thinks is Miami Beach, but he took a wrong turn and is now in the Sahara Desert. Sam is there, who isn't happy that Bugs is trespassing on his desert, which is kind of weird, but anyway. So then the two do the usual Bugs versus Sam battles, and we even get a wonderful surprise at the end. So we'll no doubt go through all that.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, so trivia-wise, I mean, I am going to spoil the ending, so might as well do it here. You see Daffy at the end, and so technically this means that this is the first Bugs and Daffy short with the two of them together in a Friz Freleng short. Later on, he'll do other team-ups and so on, but here, yeah, first time. I was actually surprised. I thought there was one earlier one, and I was looking into it, and I don't recall any.
And this is one of the very first post-shutdown Warner Brothers cartoons, if I'm not mistaken. The studio was more or less transitioning with their quote-unquote newer content, even if audiences didn't exactly know about the shutdown at this point in time.
And if you watch the opening, this particular rendition of The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down, that's done by Milt Franklin, who's also the person that does the music in this one. Every time you hear this rendition, you know it's going to be a late 50s, early 60s short, because they use this on all of them, right up until they change it to that rather abstract-looking one, which is attributed to one of the best anime shorts of all time, which is Now Hear This, but also with some of the worst. I think I should filibuster so I don't end up making it to those ones. Anyway, we'll definitely have to deal with those at some point. And speaking of music, according to the cue sheet, apparently parts of this score were done by an uncredited Carl Starling, and if so, I don't think there's much to it. It might have been that maybe Milt Franklin was sick a few days or something, maybe he had a cold and Carl Starling stepped in for him. Who knows? It's one of those things, but apparently that's the case, that Carl Starling did some of the music in this one.
It could just be a case of, oh, well, maybe I'll just fill in the blanks here while Milt is maybe off for a day or two. But either way, Milt Franklin was at the point, even if he was more or less just starting as a composer, where he could emulate Carl Stalling's work pretty well, especially since he had been doing the orchestrations for God knows how many years. So either way, even if there's work by Carl Stalling, you almost can't tell.
Although there are a few musical cues in this one, Franklin, while he uses less of that stuff, he still does it. Now, there are a few reuses in this one. I mean, people always say, oh, Friz Freleng reused a lot of stuff. Well, I wouldn't exactly attribute everything to him reusing stuff. You've got reused animation from Frigid Hair when Bugs Bunny comes out of the hole saying, Miami Beach at last. So you got that. I mean, why that particular bit of animation? Don't know, but it works. Audiences wouldn't know, and audiences wouldn't care. It's just an observation, of course.
Anything to save a few bucks, especially when the studio is just reopening up, might as well take advantage of it.
Exactly. And there's even a reused gag. If you watch Acrobatic Bunny, there's a scene with an elephant going crazy, wants to see a mouse. Bugs winds up this mechanical mouse, and the elephant goes crazy and uses the line to try and bash this mouse. They do the same thing here, where, again, Bugs winds up a mouse, and Sam is used as a piece of wood to try and smash this mouse.
Same writer, different director this time around. I personally prefer the one in Acrobatic Bunny, largely because of the elephant's insane vocal effects, but this one is definitely pretty funny on its own, even if it just kind of wraps a little too abruptly, so to say.
And one more thing, they note Miami Beach, and of course we all know now that it's a massive holiday destination, beaches and so on, and well, parties, I guess. Miami Beach had always been a popular holiday destination, but its popularity grew enormously in the post-war years. Of course, you got the baby boomers and people needed to go somewhere for their yearly vacation, and Miami Beach just ended up becoming a really popular place. So I guess that's why it's mentioned here. Maybe a few of the staffers went. Who knows? With this short, the funny thing, my relationship with this short is I know of it, and I watched it as part of the Looney Bugs Bunny movie where they used most of it. Not all of it, but they used a good chunk of it, and I remember always loving it. I never actually saw the full thing until years later in the Looney Tunes Golden Collection, so imagine my surprise seeing the Daffys at the very end of it. Either way, it's still a pretty funny short. And I should also note that they even reused parts of it in Arabian Nights and in Devil's Food Cake. So, yeah.
Yep.
So it's definitely popular enough.
I wouldn't say I watched this cartoon a lot as a kid, but I'm definitely familiar with it. I think I do remember watching it in the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, even though I haven't seen that movie in years. Although I do remember, very similarly to Devil's Food Cake, where it was also reused, Sam is trying to catch bugs to replace him down in
the other place, Doc.
At least in the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, when Sam goes back up, his first scene is him being like, "What am I doing on this humpback mule?" referring to the camel.
What am I doing on this humpback mule?
But in Devil's Food Cake, it just sort of fades into Sam's very first scene where his very funny camel, I should add, is sort of walking down one path in the desert, and then Sam sees the footprints that Bugs is in. We'll talk about Devil's Food Cake in the future.
P.S. It's not a very good cartoon.
But as far as my general relationship with the short, I've more or less known about it since I was little, not just through those shorts, but of course also on the Golden Collection as well. It's funny you mentioned the special features, Anthony. I haven't seen those in a while, but I do vaguely remember one specific scene. This might get into spoilers, but for those who have seen the cartoon, there's a scene where Sam carves out a bullock in the castle, and after he takes it out, he sees a cannon. He freaks out, tries pushing it back in, but the cannon still shoots him away. That's not how it was in the original storyboards. In the storyboards, it was the gag we've kind of seen before in other cartoons where after Sam takes the stone out, the cannon hits him, like it shoots him, and then he puts the stone back and falls over. I'm not sure why they changed it, but either gag works fine. If anything, it kind of shows how one key difference between the story artists and the directors is what you see in the final cartoon is pretty much in execution from the original concept that the story artists did, that the directors took care of.
There's a few deleted scenes, and I'll cover them off as we go along. But I reckon we take a look at this short from start to finish and, yeah, see why this one is an all-time classic, at least in my book anyway. I know a lot of people like this one, and with good reason. I will say the creators should have maybe got lessons on how to write in Arabic, but anyway, we'll put that aside. But I like the music here, and, Milt Franklin, I never really paid attention to this before, and I think this might be my good friend Manny Cruz, the 2D tenor. His influence, I think, has gotten me to listen a little bit more to the music and that, and the differences between Carl Starling and Milt Franklin. And I think one good example is this whole bit with Bugs coming in. I don't think Carl Starling would have done it this way. If you listen to the piano when Bugs is coming in, when he's digging through, like that extra touch there. In fact, you can listen to the whole score on the Golden Collection too. If there's a music-only track, it's quite a great listen.
Usually when those tracks would begin on the special features, it would begin with either Carl Stalling or Milt Franklin going like, production number, whatever, Sahara Hare, and then they do the conductor ticks before officially beginning. So I'm not sure if at the beginning you hear Carl Stalling or Milt Franklin, but it is still nice to hear those, because I don't think we would have heard their voices anywhere else outside of maybe an occasional interview. So it is nice to hear those tracks. I think you can credit Greg Ford for that because he started the Carl Stalling project, which is how we know about certain music cues that Carl Stalling did. So it is nice to at least hear those from time to time on the Golden Collections.
Definitely listen to the music-only track if you have a chance to do so, because it does illustrate the differences, I think, between what Carl Stalling did and what Franklin did. But in any case, it's a great use of the piano there. Speaking of great sounds, listen to Mel Blanc and just how happy sounding he is with Bugs going, "Hey, Miami Beach," and so on. And he's just gone absolutely crazy.
Miami Beach at last! Yippee! Hooray! Yahoo! Whee! Yippee! Yahoo!
But in the deleted scenes, how they were originally going to open with this is actually him popping out of the hole going, "Yep, I turned here, I did this," and going from New Jersey. They even write Jersey in the actual storyboard, funnily enough. So I'm not just, enhancing it, right? But I think they were wise to delete that. You don't need to know all of this. I think it's funnier just him just thinking he's at the beach when it's this, I guess, massive beach for him. It's like, where's the water?
It tightens up the pacing too. Like, we don't need all this big expository stuff. It's just funny to have Bugs just running down, and then after a while he's tired because, hey, he ain't kidding. That beach is low tide because it's not a beach. It's a ginormous desert.
And he goes, "Dig this crazy beach. Must be low tide." This cartoon's got so many funny one-liners, and I'll definitely go through some of my favorites, but man, I just love it.
Man, dig this crazy beach. Must be low tide.
But he goes, "Yeah, there's a park over there. I wonder if that's where the water is." And he then mutters to himself, I also thought the Atlantic Ocean would be bigger. Like, big deal. Oh, well, might as well take a dip. And just the expression of Bugs in the mud. Just, again, this is definitely a much better opening than him trying to go, "Oh yeah, I turned here, I went here. Yep, this must be the place." That's what I think anyway. So I think they made the right choice, for sure.
So this is the big pond. Big deal. I always pictured the Atlantic Ocean as so much bigger. Well, as long as I'm here, I might as well take a dip.
Another great example of Milt Franklin is listen to the music that he does of Sam on the camel. And these are all original cues, by the way. There's no cues on it. Man, I always love this bit. I've always loved it as a kid. The animation of the camel's running cycle as he's running, and he's just got that same expression. And Sam whacking the camel in the head, and he says, "When I say whoa, I mean whoa."
Whoa, camel, whoa, 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 camel, whoa! Oh, come on, whoa! When I say whoa, I mean whoa!
Just the delivery of Mel Blanc, everything works perfectly in that bit, done so well. And when I say musical cues, what do we hear? Spring song, because of course we do.
Why not?
Why not?
The added cherry on top is the camel's head forming a lump, but his actual hump just shrinks down as it does that. That's such a silly visual gag. I love it.
And again, another musical cue, we hear Bugs singing in bathtub, which, as we all know, was the first Looney Tune. That's the same title and the same song that they use. So it's always a nice little callback, even if they don't intend for that. But he's having a bath, so what else is he going to sing, right?
Singing in the bathtub.
Now I hope that'll learn you, you humpback muley.
But the next bit I always loved as a kid because it's such a stupid detail. Of course, Bugs needs a towel. He goes up and pulls off the rear of Sam's headpiece. But what I always loved was how a new one just pops in the bag. You just hear the clicking sound, like it's a towel dispenser.
What's up, Doc?
They didn't do other gags like that in cartoons, let alone one set in a fictional but still prominent Arabian setting.
Yeah, and we actually do get a bit where in the deleted scenes where Bugs says, of course, in the short, your slip is showing, right? But in the deleted scenes, he goes, "I know, lady," or whatever it was, I'm a he-Arab or he-Rab or whatever. And yeah, I guess I don't know. That doesn't quite work for me, but anyway, I can see why they probably would have cut it. It didn't quite work. But man, the introduction of Sam in this one, though, is "I am Riff Raff Sam, the riffiest riff to ever riff a raff."
I always love Sam's introductions, like, "I'm Yosemite Sam, the meanest, rottenest hombre who ever packed a six-shooter," and they would just do it again and again in most introductions. And this one is just so quick, like, "I'm a riff raff and the riffiest riff to ever riff raff."
You with a sideshow around here?
I'm no doc, you flea-bitten varmint. I'm Riff Raff Sam, the riffiest riff that ever riffed a raff.
Your slip is showing.
It's so corny, but it just works so perfectly for Sam's aggressively silly attitude.
After the Slippy showing bits, and again, the music in that is fantastic, but you pointed out something to me, though, is, when Sam starts shooting at Bugs.
Usually in cartoons and movies, when the antagonists are shooting at the protagonists, usually they just kind of fly off or miss. But after Sam shoots at Bugs repeatedly and misses him, while Bugs just walks away all casually, Sam actually does get him with a bullet. He hits him in the rear, and then Bugs runs off. It's only a little detail, but I think it's an interesting note to indicate, oh, he actually does pose at least somewhat of a threat this time around.
Exactly. So we didn't get another great bit of Sam doing the opposite before, saying, when I say whoa. Now it's like, when I say giddy up, I mean giddy up, and he hits the camel. And I wonder if the sound effect is of a real camel. Sounds like it. Maybe it is. I don't know.
It could be Treg Brown fooling around.
Could be, but yeah, again, the animation of that bit, fantastic. Although, when we go back to I said, whoa, we actually don't see the whack. I'm actually surprised that they didn't actually reuse the same bit of animation earlier on when he actually hit the camel.
It was probably a way, one, to save on cost, but also, since we already saw the first attempt, maybe Friz thought to himself, like, yeah, the audience doesn't need to see it. They just need to hear it.
Yeah, giddy up, yeah, camel, giddy up, giddy. When I say giddy up, I mean giddy up.
And Mel Blanc does a different delivery, which I like, which emphasizes, when I say whoa, pauses, I mean whoa. Like, he does that different delivery.
I mean, whoa.
When I say whoa, I mean whoa.
And during this actual chase, we hear another music cue in My Merry Oldsmobile, where we see an older car. It's like, what a spot to pick for a Mirage.
What a spot to pick for a Mirage.
Always love Bugs' mispronunciation of certain words. Nice little gag in the middle there, why not? But the short ends up turning on this rather leisurely paced, funny little wordplay thing into just gags, gag after gag, and that's it, right? And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but it definitely does change in terms of what sort of short it is.
And then we get to an interesting bit where Sam is pounding on the door and he's telling Bugs, like, open up the door, rabbit. And then he opens it kind of like a drawbridge, and Sam's like, close it up again, close it. And he opens it up and Sam is all squashed. What's funny is they not only reused that gag in the Oscar-winning Nighty Night Bugs a few years later, but both shorts were actually used in the Looney Bugs Bunny movie. Even though they do reuse clips from Sahara Hare, they actually reanimated that bit for the scene. And I actually don't remember the specific bit off the top of my head, but they essentially changed it up.
They always revisit gags, but usually they'll improve on things or do something a little bit different for sure. And I love that bit you just mentioned. It's fantastic. And we even see this little fort that's, I guess, full lease or rent called Morocco on this number. So I guess the country owns it. And I guess we know which part of the Sahara Desert we're at. And this also conveniently explains why there's no one else at this fort. And we're just animating two characters. In fact, there's really only three, well, actually, technically four if you count the elephant. So you got Bugs, Sam, the camel, and that elephant. And that's it. So it's very, very straightforward in that regard. But now it's just all gag after gag after gag after the whole yoo-hoo, Mr. Arab. But yeah, let's go through them and see what we think of them. I mean, this is going to be some kind of like covering a Roadrunner short. But anyway, yeah. Quick gag of Sam pole vaulting, but misses. Yep, funny, love it.
Gets the job done, now move on.
Yep.
You, Mr. Arab.
Quick gag of Sam removing block, but it's blasted back by cannon, which you already mentioned was done differently in the storyboards, and I'm glad they did it this way because I love the aftermath, and they didn't have to animate much. They just showed the aftermath of the blast.
It gets the job done a lot quicker.
And just seeing Sam's panic face once he realizes that it's a cannon there. I mean, that's some cannon. But yeah, I love that one. That was a great one. Another gag, he's on stilts, blasts the gun, goes backwards. Simple, quick. Again, does the job, as you say, hilarious. But now he brings the elephant, and of course the mouse is involved. Great animation, especially of that elephant. Although you do have to wonder, where did he get this elephant? I mean, we're talking about desert for literally miles around.
Maybe he just happens to have a farm or barn of just a handful of animals.
Yeah, he's got some interesting hobbies, this Riffraff Sam. I know, I'm just overthinking it. It's hilarious. But anyway,
Mule! Yeah, 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 yeah! Mule! Yeah!
it's a great gag, and I do agree, I do prefer perhaps the animation in Acrobatic Bunny executing this, but whatever, they're both great anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And we can see that Sam is a bit of a mathematician. If there's any mathematicians watching this review, let me know if those sums look in any way, shape, or form, well, if they make any sort of sense. Definitely let me know, okay? So, of course, he misjudges, and he ends up in a tree. He chops the tree down, tries again, hits the next one. It kind of reminds me of a gag, yeah, different writers, of course, but in Robin Hood Daffy, the yikes and away, yikes and away.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of reminds me of that.
Actually, and just to add into that mathematic equation thing, you tried the first time, you fail, and then you go back and do the mathematics and try it again. It actually kind of reminds me of Wise Quackers, the one where Daffy was essentially Elmer's slave, and Elmer sicks those two dogs on Daffy, and it's a very similar type of gag where they actually try out the mathematical equation, try chasing after Daffy, they hit a pole, and then go back to do the equations, and then try it again. And like, obviously a completely different execution and setting, but both gags are pretty funny. Me personally, I think it would have been a little funnier if Sam had done it just one more time. Maybe he could have cut down all of the trees, and this time he finally makes it, and you think, oh, is he going to hit the castle? No. What if he keeps going but ends up just flying way too fast and just goes off in the distance? That would have been my personal method of doing it, but either way, the final result in the short is pretty funny in and of itself.
Not really much of a punchline, but yeah, whatever. You know, we move on to the next one, which is a quick gag. And this one surprised me, actually. So you got Sam using a piece of wood to climb up the side. Bugs chops the wood, but Sam also splits in half. I'll admit I didn't expect that one.
That's a pretty brutal gag. I'm actually surprised that Sam even came back. Obviously cartoon logic, but it's pretty funny when you think about it.
Friz would throw in these surreal gags every once in a while. He usually doesn't do that sort of thing, but when he does, it's always a nice little happy surprise, I guess. But then we get to the last gag, and I like how, of course, it says secret entrance in big writing in the back of this fort, but before this last gag, there were a few other gags that were planned. There was another deleted scene involving Sam trying to dig underneath, and then there's a plunger nearby, which Bugs happens to activate and blows up Sam, and he climbs out and falls over, which, you know, I can see why they cut it. It's just more the same. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, yeah, I think they realized, yeah, for timing reasons, they could just cut out one gag and that's it. So, not really much to it. But it's good, again, that we've got these storyboards to see the actual process of how they make these things and see what was cut and what was altered. It's always fascinating to see.
Oh, for sure. And at the end of the day, it's good to have all your ideas out on the table, so when it's time to actually make the whole thing, you can see which gags can be kept in and which ones can be left out.
100%. We get the wonderful gag which they had in Looney Bugs Bunny movie, where it's, I wonder if he's stubborn enough to open all those doors. And I just love the whole thing with Sam just being so determined to get this rabbit who, let's face it, all he did was make some footprints in the desert, which will be blown away anyway, so it makes it even funnier when you think about that.
I wonder if he's stubborn enough to open all those doors. Yep, he's stubborn enough.
Now, in the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, he basically blows himself up and goes back to the other place. But here, he blows up and he's like, yep, he's stubborn enough. And that's it for Sam. But then we get a nice little topper, which is that Daffy cameo that was mentioned earlier on in the trivia. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw Daffy at the end?
I've seen this short a lot, so I can't even remember what my initial reaction was, but it is a pretty funny conclusion. Granted, we don't know exactly what the aftermath of Sam was after that explosion, but considering the ending bit of Daffy running down the desert and Bugs trying to warn him, but then he says, let him figure it out for himself. It's a pretty funny way to wrap it up, to see like, oh, well, will Daffy realize it's the desert, or is Sam going to come back and try to kill him? You never know, but it's a pretty funny way to wrap up the whole thing without having to necessarily repeat anything beyond the same opening gag.
Exactly. Or Daffy finds Sam's dead body, he's arrested by the Moroccan police, and he's put into prison. Who knows? Anything could happen, right?
I've seen too much. It's enough to make you cry.
I should probably mention one thing, and we can probably highlight this guy later down the road more, but this cartoon actually marked one of the first credits for animator Ted Bonnickson. Now, not a whole lot is known about Ted Bonnickson, but he was, if I'm not mistaken, a Disney animator long before he was an animator at Warner Brothers, but supposedly he was an assistant animator at the studio before the shutdown, and then after the shutdown, when everyone came back, he was promoted to a full-fledged animator. His first credit was By Word of Mouth from 1954. Even though he started off in Friz Freleng's unit, it wouldn't be long until he ended up in Robert McKimson's unit after McKimson came back to the studio. Again, not a whole lot known about him, but he would end up in Robert McKimson's unit for pretty much the rest of the studio's tenure. And then afterwards, his last notable credit was Ralph Bakshi's first feature, Fritz the Cat. Oh, and on a side note, this also marks the second credit for Jerry Chinicki. He returned to the studio after the shutdown. For some reason, he was gone for a few years beforehand, but we get to see more of Jerry Chinicki's ever so snappy and polished animation. So there's a little known fact for you, history fans.
So in terms of a rating, this one's an absolute classic. It is one of the better of the Bugs and Sam team up, and hey, I guess the studio must have thought so as well, given how many times they reused this whole thing in not only 2 upcoming shorts, but even the feature film later on, and with good reason. This is actually pretty funny. Some might go objectively, it just goes from something that's leisurely paced and funny wordplay kind of thing to just nothing but gag after gag, and that's it. But you know what? It's funny. This actually gets 9 out of 10 because I love it that much. I really do. It is a top tier one for me, especially at this time of the studio. So yeah, that's my rating.
I wouldn't give it that high of a rating personally, but make no mistake, it's still a thoroughly enjoyable short. I've just seen it a few too many times, and I enjoy some other Bugs and Sam shorts a bit more than this one, but either way, it gets the job done very well. A lot of the gags land just fine, and it's got some neat little surprises here and there. So I think I'd give it maybe somewhere between a 7 or an 8. I can't nail it down for sure, but just to be safe, maybe a 7.5 or kind of close to an 8 out of 10. But yeah, I'll leave that as my final ranking.
Yeah, fair enough. But that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, make sure you stay out of the Sahara Desert. It's bloody hot over there.
Oh yeah, I know from experience. Not.
Last one in's the hard-boiled egg! Yippee! Hooray! Yahoo! Whee! Hooray! Hey, this isn't it. Hey, just a minute. This isn't... Let him find out for himself.